at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We got to unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights. If we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped. Enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Dean Obeidallah here. Thursday, January 30th, your special impeachment trial, MBFF. And I got to tell you, this is frustrating yet angering what's going on. And it is clear that we, whoever is in the resistance on our side, whoever opposes Trump, you could be a normal conservative at this point and be on the side of opposing Trump because it's not left and right lines anymore. It's pro-American values or pro-Trump values. But we are the last line of defense. It really is clear to me they're not going to vote for witnesses. Barring something happening, this is all going to end. And the Republicans have chosen Trump over the U.S. Constitution. They've chosen Trump over the rule of law. They've chosen Trump over the American understanding of justice. They've chosen Trump over 75% of the American people in a recent poll that said there should be witnesses. And no, they haven't voted yet. You haven't missed anything. The vote is scheduled for tomorrow. It's going to go down. We don't have the votes. We needed 4 Republicans to come over to put America first. And at this point, there's 3 at best. And today, though, began on Twitter and in a press conference before the Q&A, because yesterday's Q&A is one more day. Tomorrow is the vote on, the first vote is almost procedural. Should there be any witnesses? And if that becomes yes, if 51 say yes, then there'll be a debate over various witnesses. But if that does not get 51 votes, it's done. Essentially, the trial comes to an end, except they have deliberations and the way it's supposed to be behind closed doors according to the rules. But today, though, began with a debate, a very robust debate, pushing back on Alan Dershowitz's comments yesterday. And I just want to play just a small clip from yesterday, Alan Dershowitz saying stuff on the floor of the Senate that literally would make your jaw drop and you can't believe you're in the United States of America hearing this. Here's clip number 1.
Every public official that I know believes that his election is in the public interest. And mostly you're right. Your election is in the public interest. And if a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
So essentially, if you're running for re-election, anything you do is in the national interest. You can do quid pro quos. You can do anything. It's so ridiculous. Colbert last night mocked it. Here's clip number 2. Colbert last night on his show.
Sifting through the logical turd Dershowitz just pinched out in the Senate well there. It's hard to find the largest corn kernel of logical fallacy. But I think I already guess it's this. His justification why any quid pro quo with a foreign government to manipulate our elections would be fine. Why is that again, Alan?
Your election is in the public interest.
No, it's not. Only the public gets to decide what's in the public interest, not the politician. With his blueprint for a banana republic.
The complex middle case is, I want to be elected. I think I'm a great president. I think I'm the greatest president there ever was. And if I'm not elected, the national interest will suffer greatly. That cannot be an impeachable offense.
That cannot be an impeachable offense? You can do anything if you believe in yourself? What sort of inspirational posters are hanging in Dershowitz's office? Confidence. When you believe you can fly, you're always above the law.
You know, here I thought Alan Dershowitz would be remembered in history for the man who defended Jeffrey Epstein and admitting to getting a massage at Jeffrey Epstein's house while wearing his underwear. But instead, he will be remembered forever for defending Donald Trump, the corrupt criminal, and trying to destroy our republic at the same time. And if Dershowitz's argument is believe that if a president running for re-election is in the national interest, hence they can do anything, that means Richard Nixon, everything Richard Nixon did was fine. Because what he did, Watergate, was, it began before the 72 election. It was all about getting dirt on his opponents. And that was the focus. That would mean what Nixon did was fine. Is that right with anyone? Does anyone think what Nixon did, using the apparatus of government to investigate his opponents, was fine? Okay, it's not okay. So Adam Schiff today really ripped into him. Right at the top, Adam Schiff today going head on Alan Dershowitz. Clip number 3, please.
Justice Senator, there is no limiting principle to the argument that we heard last night from the president's team. That is, if there's a quid pro quo that the president believes will help him get reelected, and he believes his reelection is in the national interest, then it doesn't matter how corrupt that quid pro quo is. It's astonishing that on the floor of this body someone would make that argument. Now, it didn't begin that way in the beginning of the president's defense, but what we have seen over the last couple of days is a descent into constitutional madness, because that way madness lies. If we are to accept the premise that a president essentially can do whatever he wants, engage in whatever quid pro quo he wants. I will give you this if you will give me that to help me get elected. I will give you military dollars if you will give me help in my reelection. If you will give me illicit foreign interference in our election. Now, the only reason you make that argument is because you know your client is guilty and dead to rights. That is an argument made of desperation.
It is a frightening argument. It would be laughable, Alan Dershowitz's argument, if he was not held in esteem by certain people in this country and a Harvard law professor, at least a former one. And then Adam Schiff made a really compelling argument about the attempt of the Trump team to normalize lawlessness. And here is clip number 5 we'll jump down to.
That's okay, and there's nothing that Congress can do about it. And what's more, if part of that quid pro quo involves an investigation of his political rival, the fact that his political rival is running for president gives it greater legitimacy, not less, because it would be more consequential. That is the most absurdly dangerous argument that could have been made. And the fact that they must resort to this level of desperation is the result of the fact that the House managers proved the defendant's scheme involved withholding of military aid, withholding of a coveted White House meeting with the president of Ukraine in order to coerce, to extort, to blackmail that country into conducting or announcing these sham investigations, to helping him cheat in the election. They went on to say that soliciting, inviting, coordinating foreign assistance in a U.S. election, notwithstanding what the FBI director says, or any self-respecting American says, that they view that as perfectly fine. It is the normalization of lawlessness.
So much of Donald Trump's actions are calculated. It's to normalize what he wants this country to be. It's to normalize white supremacy. It's to normalize sexism. It's to normalize cruelty. It's to normalize abusing women and standing with the men that abuse them. And it's normalizing corruption and lawlessness, as Adam Schiff points out. There's a through line here with Donald Trump. And then Adam Schiff, and that clip was actually at a press conference right before they went in. And I want to play one more clip of Adam Schiff. This is back in the well of the Senate today, talking about Watergate. And what have we learned? And interestingly enough, last night, Jill Wine-Banks was on the show, a former Watergate prosecutor, who said what Trump has done is worse than Watergate. And she wasn't being hyperbolic. She explained herself. She said on Watergate, it was involving Nixon's campaign. With Donald Trump, it's not just his campaign. It's involving a foreign power and hurting our standing in the world and risking lives in the Ukraine while withholding military aid. So here is Adam Schiff on the floor of the Senate just a few hours ago talking about Watergate. And have we learned anything from a scandal that drove a president from the White House? Clip number 4.
Now, what's so striking to me is almost half a century ago, we had a president who said, well, when the president does it, that means it is not illegal. That, of course, was Richard Nixon. Watergate is now 40 to 50 years behind us. Have we learned nothing in the last half century? Have we learned nothing at all? It seems like we're back to where we were. The president says it, it's not illegal. Or Donald Trump's version, under Article 2, I can do whatever I want. Or Professor Dershowitz's point, if the president believes it helps his reelection, it is therefore in the national interest. He can do whatever he wants. In fact, much as we thought that we progressed post-Watergate, and we enacted Watergate reforms, and we tried to insulate the Justice Department from interference by the presidency, we tried to put an end to the political abuses of that department. As much as we thought we enacted campaign finance reforms, we are right back to where we were half a century ago, and I would argue we may be in a worse place, because this time, that argument may succeed.
I think that's such an important point Adam Schiff made. In the case of Watergate, Richard Nixon's wrongdoing was uncovered. At some point, it got so damning that even Republicans turned on him and went famously to his office and said, you have to resign. And he did. In this case, the Republicans are in lockstep. The best you have are 3 potential senators voting for a witness or 2. That is it. Donald Trump, by his own transcript, which I call a confession, told us that he called up the Ukrainian president and asked him to investigate Hunter and Joe Biden. The Ukraine is racked with corruption. Military procurement scandals to financial scandals, all, and we've covered on this show in the past, we'll go over it again in the future. Scandal after scandal, huge scandals. Billions of dollars in scandals. And the only people Donald Trump asks about are Hunter and Joe Biden. So clearly, we know what this is about. This was simply to help him. The Republicans, they're not dopes. They get it. They know exactly what it's about. But for power, they are defending him tooth and nail. And part of and this is not talked about, at least in my view, enough in the media. Part of the love of Donald Trump's base and the Republicans in the House and the Senate is a love of power, but there's something else. And I don't believe it's talked about enough. And that is that Donald Trump represents to them the defender of the white power structure. And we have demographic change in this country, which they hear about every day. And Barack Obama manifested that change, a black face in the White House. And studies have shown after this election, after 2016, how much this sense of a loss of status, that it wasn't economic anxiety, it was white anxiety. It was the fear of losing power in this country that they grew up in, where the white power structure was unchallenged. There was never a concern it would be ripped apart and people of color would go into positions of power. Because some sadly view it as a zero-sum game as opposed to, well, we can all succeed. It is not a zero-sum game. But some of them view that as that. And this resentment and this white anxiety, its natural consequence is more polarization and even more partisanship on the side of those who will stand up to prevent this country from becoming more demographically mixed. So when Donald Trump says, I want to build a wall, it doesn't matter if the wall gets built. It's a monument to standing up to preventing brown people from coming in this country and changing the demographics even more. When Donald Trump has his Remain in Mexico plan, we had Congressman Chuy Garcia on last night who talked about the heartbreak of seeing thousands of people in camps on the other side of the U.S. border who wanted to apply for asylum in accordance with the law. They weren't sneaking in. They were in squalor. Instead of compassion from Trump supporters, that makes them happy. The brown people are on the other side of the moat. So when you wonder what's going on here, there are various reasons Trump supporters support him. I'm not saying all of them are motivated by white supremacy. But I am saying it is part of that. It is there. And they're really good books. How Democracies Die. A new book by Ezra Klein, who I might interview next week. How we got so polarized. And studies back this up. And I don't think it's talked about enough. In fact, let me show you the blind loyalty of the Republicans today in defending Donald Trump in the indefensible. Because you could say, intellectually honest, what Donald Trump did was wrong. But I don't think he should be removed from office. That's an argument we can have. They won't say that. Today, the very first question by the Republicans was by Rand Paul. And it was rumored last night this was going to happen. That Rand Paul was going to try to out the whistleblower and have John Roberts read a question with the whistleblower's name in front of America. And Roberts knew this. And here was John Roberts' response when he got the card. He looked at it, and here's his response. Clip number 6, please, Nina.
The presiding officer declines to read the question as submitted.
And Rand Paul stormed out. Why did Rand Paul and other Republicans want to tell the American public the name of the whistleblower? It has nothing to do with the evidence. We have direct evidence now, far more credible and persuasive than the whistleblower who was secondhand. The goal is this simple. Rand Paul wants his name out there to send a message, because he knows when that person's name is out there and it's confirmed, that person's life will become miserable. That person might even get killed. But it sends a message from the Trump enablers that if you speak out against Donald Trump, if you report his crimes, even in accordance with our whistleblower laws, we're going to out you, and your life and your career are going to be destroyed, and you might even get killed or your family might be hurt. That's the message. Let's not play games. And the media should be calling it out, because that's what this is. This is intimidation of future people who are using the whistleblower statute for their protection. We should never know the whistleblower's name. That's the way the law is it protects them to encourage people coming forward. They don't want that. So Rand Paul today tried to get John Roberts, who refused to read it. And thankfully for that. What else happened? Lots of smears of Hunter and Joe Biden. That'll continue tonight in the prime time, no doubt. I want to play Val Deming's response. The congresswoman from Florida had a great response to the Bidens and what was going on. Here's clip number 7, please.
Looking at the Bidens, no matter how many times we call their name, we have no evidence to point to the fact that either Biden has anything at all to tell us about the president shaking down a foreign power to help him cheat in the next election. The precious election, trying to steal each individual in this country's vote. I don't believe either Biden has any information about that, but let me tell you who I think does. Maybe we should call Ambassador Bolton. If we're serious about the truth, maybe we should call him, because we have a good idea about what he might say. Or what.
They're not going to call Bolton. We're not getting witnesses. Not going to happen. And then you had Pat Cipollone, White House counsel, make an argument, and he keeps making this over and over again, that impeachment is actually election interference. Let's play this clip here. Clip number 8. Try not to throw something at your radio as you listen to Pat Cipollone. Clip 8.
We've never been in a situation where we have the impeachment of a president in an election year with the goal of removing the president from the ballot. As I've said before, that is the most massive election interference we've ever witnessed. It's domestic election interference. It's political election interference, and it's wrong.
So Pat Cipollone is literally telling us that impeachment is election interference. And what he's saying is that the Constitution, which provides for impeachment, is getting in the way of Donald Trump's corrupt goals. That's what this argument is. It's that simple. It's not impeachment. It's the Constitution that's getting in the way of what Donald Trump wants to do. And Pat Cipollone there is defending it. You know, Donald Trump and his enablers are how democracies die. It's that simple. They would tear everything apart. Our Constitution, and I'm not being hyperbolic. This is all, we've seen this play out here. They do not care what Trump does. Shooting someone on Fifth Avenue is the least of what he could do. Anything, because it's not about just policy. For each of them, it's different things. Some for judges. Some they can be in the White House and put it on their resume. For many, though, it is the white power structure. And so are we going to get witnesses? No. In fact, here's Senator Mazie Hirono just a short time ago during the last break speaking to the camera. And she sounds a little defeated in her tone about what's happening. And she can't do anything about it. Here's clip number 9.
I just want to get to the alternative theory, the insane theory or argument that whatever the president does is okay. And the fact that they have Dershowitz as part of their team says to me that they actually stand by that argument, which is the argument that the president has, that he can do anything he wants under Article 2 of the Constitution. And I say we are watching the crowning of the president with Mitch McConnell holding the crown. That's what we're watching.
That's exactly what's happening. Donald Trump is being elevated to a monarch before our eyes. And it is frustrating. Look, it is frustrating to me. It is upsetting. It could be depressing if I would allow it. The idea of this powerlessness, that 75% of Americans want a witness to testify, and the Republicans, elected by a minority of our American citizens, can prevent that. And one way to respond is to say, they just keep winning and thinking like that, like we can't beat them. Or the other way to respond is let this anger you even more. When you need more motivation to register voters and knock on doors and make phone calls and go to the polls and bring your friends, remember this stuff, this powerlessness caused by us not coming out to vote. Because when we come out and vote, we win. And I'm going to give you numbers here. This is not a feel-good speech, a pep talk. This is one based on reality. Here's the data. In 2016, we lost the Electoral College. We know that. Hillary Clinton wins the popular vote by 3 million votes. It means nothing because we don't have the presidency. But how many votes did she get? 65,800,000. In 2012, when Obama was on the ballot, he got 66 million. That gap, if it would have been in the right states, would have given us the election. But more importantly, look at 2008. There was less Americans in 2008 that could vote. We are a bigger country today in 2016, 8 years later. How many people voted for Obama in 2008? 69,500,000. 69,500,000. How many voted for Trump in 2016? 62.9 million. So when there were less Americans and we came out in 2008, we had nearly 70 million people vote for Obama. And Trump didn't even get 63 million. If we would have all come out in 2008 and didn't play games and fight amongst ourselves, Trump would not be here. We'd be defending President Hillary Clinton against smears, but we would be there. And more recently, look what happened in 2018 and 19 when we came out. In the last 2 years, we have flipped 9 governorships from red to blue, including in Kansas and in Kentucky. Just a month and a half ago, we defended the very red state of Louisiana, where Trump went all in. Since Trump became president, we've won over 400 state legislative seats. Why? Because we came out. In 2019, just a month and a half ago, we flipped the Virginia House of Delegates and the state Senate, controlling both. The first time in 25 years. Why? Because we came out. Because there's more of us than them. 2018, we came out, we won the House. 40 seats. And how much did we win the House by? Keep in mind, Hillary beats Trump by 3 million votes. 2018, Trump is traveling the country every night doing rallies, getting his base out there. Not only do we win 40 seats, what was our margin of victory in the overall vote in the midterms? We won by 10 million votes. To give you a little history, that is the biggest margin in the history of the midterms. So they're going to win this rigged trial. We're not going to get witnesses, but we knew the results before this began. It's not a trial. I've said this. Don't call it a trial. Call it a TV show, a spectacle, a farce, a Joseph Stalin Soviet Union show trial, whatever you want. We wanted witnesses, but ultimately, the jury is not these 100 senators. The jury is November 3rd. That's when they vote. So more evidence will come out. John Bolton, we might get more statements, more emails, more documents. It's all admissible in the ultimate trial, which is the election on November 3rd. so they can keep out whatever evidence they want. This does not decide the election. We knew this was going to be for Donald Trump. There was no doubt about it. It's rigged. But I think the Democrats have done a valiant effort. The House manager, I think, did a really good job. I can't think of how they would have done better, except if they wanted to delay and try to go to court and compel some people to testify. But I've made the point over and over, this idea there were no witnesses, and there was a great question earlier. They asked the House managers and Trump's lawyers, how many witnesses and how many documents did Donald Trump produce in response to the House subpoenas? The answer is 0. So you had Patrick Philbin, the lawyer up there for Trump, going, well, all the subpoenas were not valid. Like, all the subpoenas are not valid. And who's deciding it? Team Trump is deciding it. Everything is rigged. This is a rigged system. What's not rigged? And look, it's going to be hard. And it's going to be a fight. But when you look at when we came out, we win big. If we get the numbers from 2008, and there's more Americans registered to vote now, we would destroy Trump and we would get the Senate back. So we are going to lose this. But that's not. Did this hurt Donald Trump a little bit? Yeah, there's no doubt. Does it help the Democratic nominee, whoever she or he may be, make the point? Look what Trump did, and he had to be worried about re-election. What will he do the next 4 years? This helps make that argument. And the fact that they're going to undermine the will of 75% of Americans, or there's a brand new ABC poll that came out about 2 hours ago, 66% of Americans think there should be witnesses, and they're saying no to that. We're going to use that as well. They don't believe in the American system of justice. They don't want Americans to know the truth. You know who doesn't want the truth to come out there? Guilty people. Innocent people want the truth. Innocent people want documents and witnesses that can help them. Guilty people don't want you to see anything incriminating. Common sense stuff. And that's what's going on. So I want to ask you, does the fact that they're not going to let witnesses, does it piss you off anymore? Or does it make you despondent? Are you more animated by this, or are you depressed by this? The jury, we vote. We're the jury, all of us. And we got to register more voters, my friends. There are a lot of unregistered people, young and old. Some younger people who have never been voted before. Some older people have given up. Got to bring them back in. We register them, we win. We win big, we get the Senate. Then we pass laws that help people, not corporations, and not the top 10%. Help the average American. So there can finally be wage growth in this country. So we can have health care that you don't have to worry about. That if you get sick, should you go to the doctor because you're afraid how many bills is it going to accumulate? And can you get the prescription drugs because you're not sure you can afford it? You know, people, we've all been there. And that's not the system we should have in this country. So I think it's about time. And I think 2020 is going to be potentially one of those elections historians look back at. And when we win the Senate, and then we pass laws that help Americans, I'm hoping it'll be like the times of LBJ. It's not going to be like FDR. We're not going to have that kind of victory. But you can pass policies and programs that help Americans and let the Republicans fight and let the Republicans try to repeal that stuff. So let's take a break. What's your reaction to this rigged trial? What's your reaction to not letting witnesses testify? How do you think this is going to play out in 2020? Or maybe you think it's not going to have any impact by November 3rd. I think it'll still trickle around. 866-997-4748. You're my guest right at the top of the hour. I'd love to hear from you right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.